So my friends, the 1 Series has seen quite the evolution over the last 20 years, though some might argue a devolution, and we'll go into that. But it has been 20 years of 1 Series, and now we welcome what BMW are calling the new F70 1 Series. And though it essentially is a heavily facelifted version of the F40, we're actually quite lucky to have this, because like other manufacturers, they could have axed the 1 Series as a hatchback altogether and stuck with the 2 Series. It's something that Mercedes has done, for example, sticking to coupes and SUVs, but they haven't done that. Instead, yes, we have a heavily facelifted previous version of the 1 Series now as an F70. First of all, we have a simplified engine lineup. So we start with the 120, which is a petrol 3-cylinder turbo engine, and we've got the M135. You may notice I didn't say I, because they have dropped the I completely from their petrol cars, because they're using I for all their EVs, though oddly the diesel's still branded D, but I guess it all kind of makes sense. Now what's nice in the case of both of these cars, quite reasonably priced. So today I'm going to fill you in on all of the changes that they've made. Why has the M135 gone down in power? How has that affected the drive? We will also see what the all-new interior is like, which actually adds a hell of a lot of new technology for buyers thanks to the OS 9. And then we will finally go for a drive and see what this new 1 Series is like. So join me as we jump on the road with the new 1 Series. So guys, today's episode is once again sponsored by Manscaped, and the best package that you can possibly get this holiday season for your facial hair and your beard needs. And it starts with this, the Chairman Pro. Now this is the ultimate face shaver that Manscaped have made, and it comes with 2 blade heads. The one that does your stubble is called the Skin Safe Stubble Trimmer, obviously. Super easy to put on and off. Then you have your Skin Safe 4-foil blade. That's going to give you that super close baby skin type finish. It's a 360-degree contouring head regardless of what blade you're using. And the great thing is that this shaver has Flex Adjust technology, which basically means that it's got super adjustability in the head, making sure that the contact is maintained with your skin at all times. Or you can lock it on the side with this feature, should you want to be a bit more precise. Both, of course, feature that skin safe technology, trying to help you stop irritation, and you can use both in the shower because they are both waterproof as well. But my favorite things about these is firstly USB-C, so you don't need any other cables. You've got a light, which is great for lighting up when you're under the neck, etc. And finally, it's actually got a screen on the front that tells you the exact battery percentage, which is just brilliant. With this package, you also get these 2. These have been the missing pieces as I've been using Manscaped for years now, and I've been wanting this. First is the Power Shave Gel to prep your skin with a great lubricant that's been specifically designed for the Chairman Pro and is the perfect prep to get that super close shave. And then I'm even more happy about this. This is the Face Shave Soother. It's a great post-shave serum to reduce redness, razor bumps, ingrown hairs, and soothe the skin when you're done with everything else. So guys, like I said, the ultimate package for the next 12 months to take care of your facial aesthetics. Treat yourself, treat someone you love. Use the code RBR. You'll get 20% off plus free international shipping. So use that code RBR, 20% off and free international shipping. Huge thanks to Manscaped for supporting this episode and for you guys for supporting our regular sponsors. Let's get back to the car. So what's changed? Well, like the F40, it's still based on BMW's FAAR platform for front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive cars, much like the X2, the X1, the Mini, etc. And in the UK, we have 2 models. We have our 120 and our M135. Then in terms of what's changed, let's talk about the design first of all by comparing it directly to the predecessor. And you can see we've got a completely different front end now, where the grille is actually reduced versus that predecessor. And though it's not a traditional looking BMW grille, and I've heard the Ford Fiesta comments, in the flesh I think it's actually a bit better than that. It actually reminds me, this entire front end reminds me a lot more of the new M5, particularly the lower air intakes, which very similar looking with the cut through the middle. The grille is quite similarly shaped as well. The lights have that new 4 signature straighter lights look that I actually think looks quite good. Side profile, not so different. The car is ever so slightly longer, ever so slightly taller, but essentially it's the same body because you can see the doors are identical. You've even got the old style of door handles. And on the rear, you've got those new lights like we found in the X2, which actually look quite good on this and give it a bit more of a wider look on the rear. And then the M135 is the only one to still get exhaust pipes visible, though they're quad pipes now on this car. on a car that's significantly less powerful than even the M135i from 10, 11 years ago. We'll get onto that in a minute. Then we come on to performance, and in truth, if driving purity is your thing, then this car is a far cry from its now cult classic predecessors. And to understand why those 3% of people who bought the M-Lights are in uproar over this car and, to be fair, its predecessor to this, you need to understand what the 1 Series performance version used to be. So when we look at the first generation car, you can see it's a very different shaped car. You've got a look that's almost like a sedan or a saloon with the boot chopped off. You've got a long bonnet, you've got the passenger cell sitting backward, and it's just a completely different format. In fact, tons were shared with the 3 Series at the time as well. You come to the car that followed this in a similar M135i format. This had that wonderful N55 engine from the M2 that sounded fantastic. Then the facelift came with the M140i with the 6-cylinder turbocharged engine that had 335 horsepower going to the rear wheels, which is obviously more powerful than the one that replaced, but it's even more powerful than the one after it and our car today. Now, you have to understand, all of these cars had a completely different engine format. They had engines that were installed longitudinally, so parallel to the direction of your travel, much like a sedan car. You have your engine, your transmission tunnel, and the power then going to your rear axle. And that's what kind of gave it that wonderful uniqueness for all of those models, that versus rivals who were either front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, these were cars with a 6-cylinder engine that was appropriate with power going to the rear wheels. And then if you went and tuned them, say with a better diff and a bit more power, they became even more exciting, and they're some of the most tunable, fun, cheap BMWs. And I really would recommend you go and check out some of Joe Achilles' older videos to see just how good they can be. Then came the F40, and BMW called it a revolution. And truly it was, because that engine setup of the longitudinal engine was gone, and instead they had a transverse setup, which is basically sideways. And what that did was free up a huge amount of space in the rest of the car with the aim of making it more practical, and also freed up space for front-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, etc. And there is no doubt that it made the car much more practical, much more in line with things like A-Class, Golf, S3, etc. But what we paid in terms of the price was losing the uniqueness of the car, because gone was your 6-cylinder, gone was your rear-wheel drive aspect, because you couldn't fit the engine, and obviously the format of the engine is completely different. Now, when you look at our updated car, in that sense, really not much has changed. It's pretty much exactly the same. In fact, if you want the performance one, the news might be a little bit worse, but I'll get onto that in a sec. Now, in terms of what's changed, we only have automatics now. So the manual uptake was so low that they have to stick with auto, so we can blame ourselves for that. Though we do get a new box, which is a 7-speed dual clutch, which I'm excited to try later on. And in terms of the engines on offer in the UK, like I said, we get two. Let's start with our entry level, which is the 120. Now the 120 is quite interesting because it's an inline 3-cylinder engine, okay? And it's turbocharged, but it's also a mild hybrid. So you've got the 170 horsepower, but then you've got an extra 20 horsepower and like 50 odd Newton meters on top as a little boost from that system, which is good. I'm quite excited to try that engine and see what it's like. What's more exciting, I think, is the starting price, which is just 31k, which in today's market, there's hardly anything at that level, particularly something that looks quite sharp like this and quite nice on the inside. And then if you go for the M Sport trim, it's 33k, and you can bring the car then even closer and look if you get the M Sport package, though you'll pay a little bit extra for it, it will bring it more in line to then our flagship car, which is the M135. And here the news is a little odd because we've actually gone down in horsepower. So it's still the B48 4-cylinder engine, but now it's down powered depending on your market. So it's 300 horsepower or 296 brake horsepower, 400 Newton meters and a 0-60 of 4.9, which annoyingly is 50 Newton meters less than the car that it replaces. Obviously it's a few horsepower less, 0.2 seconds slower than the M Performance packaged version of its predecessor. It's 35 horsepower slower than the M140. It's like 20 horsepower slower than the 11-year-old M135i. I mean, it's hard to argue then with the keyboard warriors who are saying, well, what is going on with this car in terms of performance numbers? And we'll try and answer some of that on the road. But in terms of what else has been changed, this is an M light, so everything else has been massaged. We've got more stiff suspension components. We've got a new M adaptive suspension, which is actually not switchable by you. Instead, it works by the frequency of the vibrations coming through it from the road and deals with the bumps itself. Again, we'll see what that's like on our harsher UK roads. That suspension also drops the car by about 8mm as well. And this is an option you can also get on the 120, by the way, so bear that in mind. We've got a mechanical front differential linked to our 7-speed box. Of course, this is an X-Drive as well. And finally, the M compound brakes. So as usual, lots of things massaged for your M-Lite version in the M135. In terms of options, there's actually quite a few colors that you can get. And in fact, BMW have opened up the individual program for you to be able to access even more spec. This particular car is fitted with the M Sport Pro package, which though it says it's about £2,000 and gives you this list of things like the red calipers, the M Sport seats, etc. You can't actually buy that without getting the tech pack, which adds, basically you'll be paying about 3.5k to get the car looking the way it is. There is a package on top of this called the M Dynamic package that gives you different suspension components. We've got more struts, we've got lighter weight anti-roll bars, we've got M compound brakes which are painted grey and are 19 inches for more braking comfort, etc. So they're trying to gear it up, they say, for more track use. So you can push this car up a level higher, and that's everything that you get in that package. And of course you do get the M design parts as well, which I think is actually good of BMW M to offer in a car like this, which has seen such a huge aftermarket tuning scene. So to have some official M parts for all around the car is quite a nice move to make. Now bear in mind there is a 2 Series that's just been announced, which looks like a twin of this car, just with the different body shape. So that's a second style available with similar engine options available as well. Now in terms of the M135, this car is going head to head literally with things like the A35, the S3, the Golf R, because the format is almost identical to those cars. 4-cylinder turbocharged engine, all-wheel drive system that is a simplified all-wheel drive, nothing fancy, that's switchable. So quite a tough crowd to sit in versus where it used to sit quite pretty as a unique offering. Now in terms of the interior differences, there's a huge amount bang for buck here on the changes. Let's check those out now. So guys, comparing this first of all directly to the interior that it replaces from the F40, you can see that there's quite a large change in here in terms of just everything from the steering wheel to the new screens that you find in the newer BMWs, the ambient lighting. Let's have a little look at exactly what they've changed in here. So first of all, we've got the all new steering wheel, which is shared with the likes of the M5, and something that really gives that away immediately is the boost button, and we will try that later. That gives you the full power as soon as you hold this down, kind of like a kick down basically, but on the paddle itself. But other than that, you can see that the interior has changed quite a bit, though the structure itself fairly similar as you would expect of a extremely extensive facelift. There are definitely those bits of new age BMW that you see in here. For example, it now uses the operating system OS 9 of BMW, which is the latest one, and what you would find in something like your 7 Series, etc. But this is that latest system that I've actually found to be really quite useful. It's got nice large touch points in terms of navigating through the apps. It's quite simple. They've got infotainment, they've got the vehicle apps itself, which are the really important ones. But do check any of our other reviews to see just how usable this system is, because I found it to be quite good. That's not what today's about. We're talking more about the driving experience. So we've got a reduced gear selector area here where you haven't got the old gear selector, which is a shame. You've got this stubby little button here, no park button. That's all done when you turn the car off, and it will go then straight into park. My modes, just like we found in the i5 and in the i7, and the graphics used here are exactly the same as well. So you have all these different styles here that then modify the look of the car, close the panoramic roof, for example, change the ambient lighting to give you a different feel in the car while you're driving. We are going to be sticking with sport mode mostly today. And again, with sport mode, you can change a few things, whether it's in the drivetrain. We've got this set on Sport Plus in the moment, driving dynamic steering, all the usual stuff that you'd find indeed in the M lights as well. And you can choose which one of these modes you would like to start the car off in to reason. Strangely though, you can't choose sport. I like the new vents with the ambient lighting here, especially when they're lit up in M colours. and you find those here behind the steering wheel as well. Overall though, I must say that the fit and finish versus something like the 2 Series Coupe is not quite there. I think it's better than A-Class. I think it's better than the Audi. I think the materials, the shape, etc. is really quite premium, but it's not quite to the level of the 2 Series Coupe, which, thanks to the fact it borrows so much from 4 Series, is a really premium looking car. I do love the steering wheel though. This is a really nice steering wheel, particularly in its M configuration with the spoke here. The buttons are nice and usable, nice big paddles, and then of course behind our driver's display, as we turn the car on, you've got a really nice virtual display that, again, this all changes depending on the mode that you're in the car at the time. So going to expressive, for example, you get a whole different look. You guys have seen this as we've done in other BMW cars in recent times, particularly the more premium ones, that all of this is configurable to your own liking. And of course we can spec things like the heads-up display as well. I think the biggest boon here for buyers is the fact that you get OS 9, which is a great operating system. You get the new steering wheel, you get an interior that is pretty nicely trimmed, particularly versus its rivals. Another thing I really liked about the interior is the fact that you've got the M logo lit up in here, which I think is probably the only non-M car outside of BMW M to have this, or the first one, and that looks good. These are the sport seats that you get in the M Sport package, which again, they've been really good in terms of keeping you nice and locked in, and generally a really nice interior. Now our car today comes with the Technology package and the Technology Plus package. This is what they come with. It's quite extensive in terms of getting comfort access. You get the adaptive LEDs, you get the rear view, you get high beam assist, parking assistant, heads-up display. There's a lot that comes standard within those packages, and it's probably something buyers are going to be looking for. In addition to that, we've got things like the glass sunroof. This car has memory package for the driver as well, the automatic climate control function as well, and it's even got driving assistant professional within here. So lots of options in this car. Our boot, exactly the same size as it was before, and this has the option of the self-closing boot as well. And all of that brings this car to a final price of 54k, which when you compare it to the standard price is like 12k over in terms of the options. So you have to restrain yourself when you're speccing this up, in my opinion, to get the best value for money. And that's also true of the 120, particularly because you get like a Veganza interior in here. It's not even real leather, it's leatherette. So, you know, it's not quite on the level, I feel, of the higher end BMWs. But overall, I think a really good interior that's well built, and it will serve you well in terms of technology. So guys, we're starting off in sport mode, and to begin with, it's immediately quite a firm car on the road. And I was kind of expecting that given what the previous version was like. Now, that's no terrible thing for a car that's meant to be the flagship here. And what's also nice that you discover immediately that this is not a slow car. You know, despite the fact that yes, it's gone down in horsepower, I'm comparing it to other things available on the market at the moment. And it's stuff that I've driven quite recently. We look at things like Audi's S3, we look at the Golf R, we look at particularly A35. This car feels as quick as those. So I don't find it lacking in speed at all. If anything, it's really doing the job quite well. With these cars, it's not speed I look for. I look for dynamism, because they're all the same in terms of engine, in terms of the technologies driving the wheels. I'm looking for the car that gives either the most emotion or the best dynamism. And what I love about this car is the steering. Actually, the steering and the steering feel on this are so improved. And not only are they improved, they're just simply so much better than the rivals that it really feels like this is the M car of the bunch, just in that one regard. Yes, I think the older cars, undoubtedly faster, undoubtedly, you know, you cannot match a 6-cylinder rear-wheel drive car to a all-wheel drive 4-pot, but for the purposes that this car exists, which is to still be a really fast car and be a really great daily, I like how they've improved the dynamism here. And it's nice, it's like an M car. You come quite hard into a corner, brake hard, the M compound brakes do really well, and it points in quite keenly, and then it has the X drive to pull you out of the corner, and you get some immense speed, but I'm jiggling around a lot. The adaptive suspension is okay. It's not on the same level as one that is selectable in terms of me being able to choose the level of adaptation here. I think for UK roads, you're going to feel the harshness. You're going to feel the harshness in the M135, and that's going to be a point against it in terms of daily usability for sure. Now, if we go into my modes and calm the car down for a second, let's go into personal. In personal, you will see that the speaker sound calms down, the engine sound calms down, the steering becomes a little bit lighter because we're not in sport anymore as well, and it does still feel really quite firm. And this is my issue with this adaptive suspension, that this is quite a flat road I'm on, but I can feel every granular bit of it. And it would have been great to have had just a comfort option on an adaptive suspension to always be comfortable, rather than it try to prejudge and missing the mark. Ignoring the suspension in terms of the power delivery, in terms of the steering, everything's calmed down in a nice way that you would be happy dailying this in a more relaxed personal mode. What I like though is that even in this mode, it still feels duly sporty, and this is all the changes they've done on the M135. And they sound like small changes, but this is really the stuff that makes the M3 what it is, or all the other larger M cars what they are. So it's important stuff, and it translates well through the steering wheel. As far as the other driving modes go, they are all a little bit gimmicky. As you know, you've seen it in i7. Your ambient lighting changes on the inside, your screens in the front change as well. This is digital art mode. You go into expressive, and it all gets a bit zany with yellows and blues. So it's nice that you can change the ambience of your interior if you want to, like other BMWs, but it seems to me a little bit out of place inside an M135. FYI guys, I've tried my hardest, right? My absolute hardest to do a launch control in this car. I've done every setting, Sport Plus, DSC off, etc. Manual, all the usual things that we do in the M cars, and put my foot on the brake. It just doesn't do anything. It just doesn't do anything. So I'm not going to measure it. I've tried it a few times. It feels quick, but launch control is just not activating. The sound, I suppose, is exactly what you would expect. BMW themselves say that there's sound being pumped in from the speakers. I can't hear much of it. I just hear what you hear in this segment, a four-cylinder straining itself. Now, if you do want some sounds, you can turn on BMW Iconic Sounds, which gives you sounds on upshift. It gives you these. I'm coming off the throttle now. I'm sure you guys can hear some rumbling that you can hear coming out. It's all augmented from the speakers, and it augments your revs as well. That's an option that you can have or not. It's all artificial. It kind of runs with the engine. The upshift is quite nice, and I'm not opposed to the whole thing, because otherwise the engine has no character, right? Well, that's really down to you whether you want to use something like that or not. The best sounding car in this segment is the A35 by a long, long stretch. It sounds even better than the A45, to be honest. And it's probably the most emotional looking of the bunch as well, because it steals so much from the A45. So if you're looking for a car to look a stage higher and sound a stage higher than it is, this is not that car. This is the car that I think is the most dynamic of the bunch in terms of great steering feel, body control, stiffness, all those things that we ask of even an M Lite. One thing that I'm a little bit disappointed about is this dual clutch gearbox. And I'm just a little bit disappointed with the shifting, in that I thought it was really going to be a boon of going to the 7-speed dual clutch when I read dual clutch, but in my experience, particularly on downshift, it's doing a similar type of job to what that 8-speed torque converter was. So I just pull the gear selector down here, put it into S, and actually it shifts pretty well just by itself. Then we try the boost mode, where you hold down the paddle, you get 10 seconds of boost. This is all taken from the EVs, right? And I think it's a bit of a gimmick in this, because it doesn't feel massively more powerful. You achieve the same pretty much with kick down or having the car in Sport Plus. And the only time I think it does work is when you're not in sport mode, and it's a pain to do. I think it's a pain to do the whole My Modes thing. I wish they had the M1, M2 buttons here. I know it's not a full M car, but it's just safer than having to do all of this while driving. That to me is when this paddle makes a lot of sense, because you can just hold it and you get the Sport Plus mode speed and power. But speed and power is not what stands out for me. What stands out for me is the steering, the dynamism of the car, the stiffness, which is actually really good. The adaptive suspension, though harsh, for the purposes of going faster, is good. The engine is responsive and works well with the xDrive and the gearbox, even though it's a little bit boring. As a tool for a purpose of going fast, it works very well. I suspect you could spec one at a lower level in the M135 and come away with a car that does a lot. I would be tempted to get more of the technology stuff because this is more of a daily car. You're going to want some more of the creature comforts in this, and it makes total sense to me. If you want to go the other way, you can, but you'll be spending quite a bit of money, and at that point I'll be saying you need to be looking at 2 Series or above. I also suspect that the 120 with its 3-cylinder inline mild hybrid is probably a really good option. I don't think that's going to be slow because this car feels really quick on country roads, okay? That, you can get quite close to this in terms of the way it looks. And I suspect in daily duties it's not going to be far away. It's a shame I couldn't drive it today because we just haven't got time on a first drive. But that is one to explore, so if you get a chance, test out the 120 as well. As far as the M135, it is what you expect. It is definitely a dynamic improvement. It doesn't feel any slower to me, but you get a whole lot more in this car, which is meant to be, in reality, a more daily version of the 1 Series performance car, just like the F40 was. And in that regard, it's doing exactly what it set out to do. Whether that'll satiate you is another matter. So guys, I hope that coverage of the new 1 Series was useful to you. If it was, please do like and subscribe to RBR. It's hugely appreciated. And I'll see you guys next time.